Japan and Australia have doubled down on defense ties, but warn of security gaps in the Indo-Pacific.
Even as the world's attention is focused on the Middle East, we must not allow a security vacuum to emerge in our own surrounding region and the Indo-Pacific.
Koizumi was speaking at a meeting with Australia's defense minister in Tokyo on Wednesday, where they discussed the war in Iran's impact on U.S. security commitments in Asia. Washington has already redeployed some of its forces from Japan and South Korea to the Middle East. They also cited a North Korean ballistic missile launch earlier that day as an example of the challenges they face.
The missile launch today of North Korea is a reminder of the challenges that we face in the Indo-Pacific and how important it is that countries of the Indo-Pacific maintain a focus on the challenges that we have here.
Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi Tsai is set to visit Australia in a few weeks. Both countries plan to participate in joint U.S.-Philippines military exercises. For more on how Japan is boosting alliances around the region, our reporter Lery spoke to Taipei-based defense analyst Bryce Barros.
There are reports that Japan intends to participate in this year's Balikatan exercises in the Philippines alongside the U.S. and other countries. What do you think this says about Japan's role in the Indo-Pacific region when it comes to security and defense matters?
It's deeply significant that Japan is participating in Balikatan for the first time using combat troops, and for their first combat deployment to the Philippines since Japanese troops were expelled from the Philippines in 1945. It speaks to Japan's desire to want to shoulder more of the burden of first island chain security, and its understanding that it needs to be able to operate and be interoperable with different forces along the first island chain. I would also look at, from the Filipinos, their own desire to want to continue to internationalize and diversify, at least under the Marcos administration, their list of partners around the region.
Japan's prime minister is set to visit Vietnam and Australia next month. Are we seeing her shoulder more of the burden for security in the Indo-Pacific region?
So I don't know if this actually speaks to Takaichi specifically, because Japan's been an observer for most of Balikatan's existence. And last year, it went from being an observer for the first time to being a participant, and that was before Takaichi came into office. What it could signal is the use of combat troops. So that's something I would definitely pay attention to as well. So Takaichi, having that combat troops might be a little bit of that, but it was a trend that was moving that way. And plenty of other like-minded U.S. allies are really keen on it.
There have been concerns in capitals across the Indo-Pacific region about U.S. forces being overcommitted and overstretched, perhaps distracted by the war with Iran, as well as broader U.S. commitments to the region's defenses. How real and credible do you think these concerns are?
I think the things to keep an eye out for in terms of quote-unquote distraction in the Indo-Pacific is, I think for this exercise, you're probably going to see the number of Americans that you expect to have gone anyways. It would be useful to pay attention to any of the signs that would show how many U.S. troops have been deployed versus previous iterations of that same exercise. And if you look at what's happening in Iran, all different U.S. forces, including the Navy, are deeply engaged doing things. So what does that mean for the ability for them to participate in future exercises outside of Balikatan, which is why it's even more important for the Filipinos to invite more diverse partners. I do think that that would speak a lot to different parts of this region really trying to think of, okay, what do we have to do if the United States is not as involved, broadly speaking? I don't think it's fully there yet, but it's a possibility. And to not acknowledge it, I think, would also be wrong.
That was defense analyst Bryce Barros.